comes down to is competitiveness, right? Whether it's hydrogen or ammonia or anything else, it needs to be paid by the end consumer. And if it's way more expensive than today's fossil fuels, we have a problem. And the next thing is swift availability of production. And last but not least, reliability of supply. Very important for our industrial customers. Before we start, please allow me a quick snapshot of what we are doing. It plays a role also here for the presentation. This slide pretty much explains it. If we start from the left, you see a vessel there. That's us trading energy products. So we source energy products around the world. We charter vessels. We bring them to our infrastructure. You see the tank terminals there with the name oil tanking. That's one of our subsidiaries. And as the name oil tank already implies, you can see where we are originally coming from the fossil industry. Then you see trucks, you see petrol stations, you see airports. So not enough supplies. The industry sector, mobility, think of shipping, aviation, but also us as private consumers with all sorts of energy products. And if you think now about the energy transition and the fancy new products we are talking about, you see that on the infrastructure side, nothing changes. Well, that's quite remarkable. And we think that infrastructure and transport are currently slightly too much below the radar when we talk about energy transition. It won't be the case that we can produce everything in Germany or in Europe when it comes to clean hydrogen or other clean products, right? Depending who you ask, there's going to be a gap between demand and supply of millions of tons every year. And these tons need to be imported. And it could be either by pipeline. This will take many, many years to build that. I'll come to that later. Or it will be by vessel. And if it comes by vessel, you need all of that, what you see here. It won't be that the hydrogen molecule will just fly magically to the end consumer. You need infrastructure in between. You need tank storage on the left. You need trucks. You need petrol stations where you then can supply the hydrogen to the truck companies, for example. So the idea is, when we talk about transport logistics of hydrogen, number one, to repurpose the currently available infrastructure to these new products. Right? That's very important to understand. Without infrastructure, the import will not work. Just will not work. Now, this is a slide on hydrogen and the logistics behind it, and admittedly speaking, it looks quite confusing. And that's on purpose because it is not as easy as many of our politicians may think. It's just one element to produce the hydrogen, which you see here on the right. You see the green hydrogen plants in Middle East Africa, South Europe, Latin America, all these places where you have abundant sun, abundant wind, which you need to create green hydrogen. Right, and then through electrolysis, you create the green hydrogen and you add nothing if you could transport the green hydrogen by vessel. The problem nowadays is there is no single vessel in the world except for 2 pilot vessels who can transport hydrogen. It doesn't exist. If you want to transport hydrogen, you need to liquefy it. In order to liquefy it, you need to cool it down to minus 260 degrees Celsius. That's very cool. And you don't have vessels for this. There's a trial vessel, pilot, as we say, shuttling between Japan and Australia for a couple of thousand tons. This is nothing. Right? And even if we would have the technology to ship the hydrogen, good luck in finding the shipyards who have to build those vessels. They're all predominantly in Asia, and they're fully sold out. They're fully booked. If you want to build hydrogen vessels, go back to the queue and you may start in 2030-ish. All right, so that is a problem when we talk about logistics and transport of hydrogen. if you make it happen, and I'll come to that in a moment, you will still need again the infrastructure as mentioned, and we go back to the other slide I showed you. The good news is, in our view, there's a way out to transport hydrogen, or there are some ways out. And you see this blue arrow here with the green ammonia. If you would be able to convert the hydrogen, the green produced hydrogen on the right, to ammonia, then you're in the game, because ammonia is a product which is very well known to the industry. Today, approximately 230 million tons of ammonia are being produced. You have tanker fleets for ammonia. It's a feedstock product for fertilizer industry. And the ammonia, the chemical formula, you probably know that much better, but it is, I know a bit of academic things. It's NH3, right? So you have the hydrogen again. You add nitrogen, and then you have the ammonia. And the ammonia to transport, to ship, you also need to cool down, but not to minus 260 degrees Celsius. It's only minus 33. That is a hell of a game changer. And then things look much better, right? And you see here a little bit our ammonia vision and some of the applications. So on the right, you see again under number 4, the production of the green hydrogen. Right? And assuming now that you convert it to ammonia, you have all the vessels, you have a huge fleet of vessels readily available to ship it. And the vessels could go back and forth, you know, for example, to Hamburg. They could also go to Asia. Power generation, by the way, why power generation? The ammonia is an interesting element in power generation if you want to reduce CO2 emissions. It's called coal firing. So, for example, in Japan, it's happening as we speak. You still have coal power plants, the dirty stuff. But if you inject ammonia in it, you will reduce the CO2 emissions. Now, unfortunately, we have also in Germany and Europe coal power plants running. And there is some reason to believe they continue to run for quite some time, whether we like it or not, but we need the energy. So if you do the coal firing, as it calls, you inject ammonia into coal power plants, also in Europe, you could immediately reduce the CO2 emissions, not to zero, but to reduce it. Anyway, if you ship the ammonia to Hamburg, for example, then if you want really the green molecule, the hydrogen back again, you crack it. Right? It's a unit or a technology called dissociator. And I'm not a chemical guy, you know that probably much better than I do. But what you do is you basically have the NH3, the ammonia, you carve out the hydrogen molecules, and you have green hydrogen that comes originally from these places. And then you can distribute the hydrogen either by truck or by rail or by pipeline. In this example in Hamburg, you can do that. To the heavy industries, think of steel plants. Here in Hamburg, the company is one of the biggest copper producers in the world. They have a hell lot of need of energy, hydrogen. Currently, they use gray hydrogen, so they conventionally produce more. They need to replace it with green stuff, and this is a way how this could happen. Basically, well, not now, but let's say in a couple of years' time, because you don't need hydrogen vessels. You use the existing fleet of ammonia tank ships to produce to transport the hydrogen. In that sense, ammonia is like a carrier liquid, right, to produce to transport the hydrogen. You can do the same, by the way, with methanol. Right? The only tricky part is that methanol still has carbon inside, whereas ammonia, NH3, there is just no carbon. So from a pure environmental standpoint, in terms of emissions, CO2 emissions, ammonia is much better. It has other challenges, by the way. I'll come to that a little later. And you see also here US Gulf, right? There's also some major hydrogen production being planned. I don't know whether you're aware of, the finance guy comes out of myself. Mr. Joe Biden, he announced the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. And that means for our industry, he will allocate close to 400 billion US dollars just for hydrogen. And it doesn't have to be always green. Green, by the way, I'm assuming you're all familiar with the color code. I want me to explain. Good. It could be green, could be blue, could be even partially gray. Right? Very American style, very pragmatic, very hands-on, and bit like the bazooka style with a lot of money on it. But it's not wrong, because the European style is more like, it has to be green right now, no exceptions allowed, everything needs to be covered. You know, if I, as a stupid commercial guy, try to read the so-called delegated acts, which are produced by Brussels, at least I need 3 times to just understand, and then I ask my lawyers, what does it mean? If I read the Inflation Reduction Act, it just takes me more time. It's very investor friendly. It's very easy to understand. So it's not only about the money. We need also easy rules. I'm just deviating off the topic, I think, which was transport and logistics, right? But anyway, that's why you see the US plays a major role in producing green hydrogen, and they also think about converting it to ammonia so they can ship it to other parts of the world, including Europe. And it's not only PowerPoints, what we are doing, it's not meant as a marketing or something. I just want to give you a hands-on example. So here in Hamburg, our company, you see there on the photo, this is how a classic fossil tank storage looks like. And this is ours, it's in the center of the port of Hamburg, it's the largest